Good evening, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast. I'm your host, Austin, Soldier First Class, and with me, I am joined by...
Tobias, with a TH, Gainsborough.
President Ryan Shinra.
Wilson Valentine.
Tori, and I'm going to steal all of your materia.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys all for joining me this evening. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, a movie that either turns 14 this year or 10, depending on which version you're watching. The reason we're doing this episode is because, as most people who exist on the internet know and follow video games and anime and whatnot, we are getting a remake of Final Fantasy VII. The original is... Yeah, exactly.
We are?
Yes, at some point next year, March
3rd, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Square this year gave us a release date for the much-anticipated Final Fantasy VII Remake, which has only been teased for about as long as the actual game has existed. Because it feels like they've been talking about remaking it, or fans have been asking for a remake forever.
I'm pretty sure that they teased it the year Kingdom Hearts 3 was also teased.
Well, you know, way back in the day, they did that PlayStation 3 tech demo that they basically recreated the opening of Final Fantasy VII with that. Do you guys remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Vaguely.
Yeah. That was the thing forever ago, and they thought, oh my gosh, we're going to get a, Final Fantasy VII remake on the PlayStation 3, but, here we are, almost on the cusp of the PlayStation 5, and the game is not yet out, but it will be very soon. But on this episode, we're not really going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII itself so much as we're going to be talking about Advent Children, the movie, and the surrounding anime related to it, because there are two notable anime shorts that I hope some of you guys watched. If not, then I'll just talk about them. But anyway, that's fine. We are Third Impact Anime, and Ryan and Will, what are you guys?
We're people, Austin.
But also...
Yeah, no, but other than them, more importantly than people, you are...
Oh, yeah,
Mid-Shelf
we're Mid-Shelf Gaming, a YouTube channel dedicated to, what does our business card say? Hang on. High-quality gaming content straight to your eyeballs.
TM.
That's a wonderful tagline. How did you guys come up with that?
Because Edwin was on the spot.
That was actually a trick question. I came up with that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did, actually.
Oh. You neglected to tell us that, or I forgot.
Yeah, you're welcome. But anyway, so you guys are a YouTube channel. You do a whole bunch of content related to video games of all shapes and sizes. All of your videos have been really good so far, and I'm not just saying that to your horn as my friends.
Well, we're going to go ahead and
make some
disagree
really
with
good
you
stuff.
then, because we know for a fact that our first video was utter crap. But that we appreciate the sentiment.
Progress goes in strides.
Yeah.
Modesty is a virtue, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're enjoying it. We're working on our puzzle game episode right now, which I would be able to put out quicker if we didn't lose the footage.
Oh no.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
Classic blunder.
I mean, are you really a YouTuber if you don't have a production issue at some point?
No.
Apparently not.
Yeah. So that's how we're looking at it.
I think we can speak to that. I think that 90 Short Walk On Girl episodes are going to come out any day now.
Yeah, you're just not going to let me live that down, are you? And honestly, you shouldn't let me live that down, because that was totally my bad. We will eventually do an episode on that movie because it is really good. But speaking of that, we are Third Impact Anime, and if you guys are new to this podcast for whatever reason, we are a podcasting and panelist group that does podcasts and panels at conventions and on the internet. We do bi-weekly podcasts about all things and anything anime related, so thank you for stopping by. We really do appreciate it. If you guys are fans of the show, there are numerous ways that you can support the show, most notably through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/thirdimpactanime. We just set this up somewhat recently thanks to Tobias's wisdom. So thank you, Elder Tobias Gainsborough. Tobias, excuse me, not Tobias.
Yeah.
Tobias or Tobias?
Exactly. But yeah, if you guys are down for the show and want us to keep making cool new content, please support us over on the Patreon, or just visit thirdimpactanime.com to find out all about the other episodes that we do and the conventions that we go to throughout the year. We've got plenty of content available for you to shove into your ears.
You've got the ears covered, we got the eyes covered.
Exactly. Teamwork. Also, I did want to shoot out a reminder of the giveaway that we are currently doing. Our friends at the at a locally owned video game store that is near to where some of us live, Lost Ark Video Games, in celebration of Animazement a couple of weeks ago, they gave us 4 import Japanese figures that we are giving away to you, our listeners, and you are the attendees that come to our panels. We've got a figure of Ruler from Fate Apocrypha. We've got 2 Pokemon figures, 1 Ash and 1 James, and then we've got a Goku figure from Dragon Ball Super, and they are all really nice, and they're all in my house, and I really want them out of there and into your house. And it's very easy for you guys to enter into the giveaway so that you guys can get some cool new figures. If you just go over to our website, thirdimpactanime.com, and find the article that says giveaway, or just check the show notes for this episode and it will be available there. And there are some very simple things that you have to do in order to be entered, but they're super simple. Even a robotic cat can do it. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure he can't do anything, so don't give him too much credit.
Fair enough. He has to be piloted anyway.
Yeah.
Which begs so many questions, but anyway, let's just keep on going. So we do have a couple of shout-outs, so we want to read from both Patreon and Ko-fi, so I'll hand that over to Tori, if you don't mind.
Sure. The first one comes from Abigail P., our very first Patreon supporter, which is really cool. She says, glad to support Third Impact Anime. I listen to you guys at work, and you make me chuckle as I'm pricing TCG cards.
Aww.
I was wondering what you guys thought of A Silent Voice. It's one of my favorites from recent years and means a lot to me since I went through bullying as a kid. I don't want to say too much, but I think we might do an episode on A Silent Voice.
I would absolutely love to do that.
Yeah,
Pretty sure
so
it's
we
been
were
discussed.
So we were kind of kicking around that idea, so we should do that and dedicate it to Abigail.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be an hour of us crying at each other, which I would listen to. But...
just nothing but crying.
Yeah, I was about to say, Tobias, you got to reset the counter because we mentioned A Silent Voice again.
I'm just going to stick fingers in my ears and just not listen, not think about it. Can't think about it.
Yeah.
Man, but yeah, we will definitely be doing an episode on that. And if you guys have yet to see A Silent Voice, it is on Netflix, so please go check it out.
Watch it while you can.
Watch it while you can, or go to Walmart of all places. You can buy it on disc, which is pretty cool.
That's actually how I picked it up. I didn't realize it was on disc yet, and I was just happened to be at my local Walmart picking some random stuff up. Hey, let's check out the DVDs, and it was there. Like, oh my god, I actually enjoyed being in Walmart for once.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been going into Walmart and just checking around their DVD section, and they have a fairly expansive anime selection right now, like stuff from like Shout Factory and G-Kids and Funimation and all this stuff. Just a lot of content, and it's somewhat affordable, especially the movies.
Yeah, which is really cool. So
we got one more shout-out from some nerd that we've never met before.
Was this our first Ko-fi?
Yes.
Coffee? However you... I don't know these things that the kids use online nowadays. Hello, I'd like this read nice and loud on a guaranteed good zesty podcast. Watch Star Mew! Okay, thanks. Enjoy the coffee and have a kick-ass con weekend, everybody. So this one was belated because we are no longer anywhere near a con.
Well, we're near art.
But thank you, Sarah Steele.
Yes, thank you, Sarah Steele, a member of this podcast. So really, this Ko-fi donation was out of pity and nothing else.
Yeah, very true.
You're not wrong.
But thanks anyway, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Actually,
That's awesome.
this is just her plot to get everybody in the world to watch idol shows.
Yeah,
It's true.
but that's
It's
okay.
You know, I didn't get to enjoy this coffee. Austin, did you save me some?
I did. I still have a splash. Actually, no joke, there is some coffee right next to my microphone. So come on down. You can have the rest of it.
You got to bring in a hammock on.
Okay, yeah, I'll save it until Hamacon.
Yeah, that
Three
sounds
more.
pretty
Which is-
appealing.
Which, Tobias, Hamacon is when and where?
We're going to be at HammockCon yet again in Huntsville, Alabama. This is our second year officially. I've been going for a couple of years previous. This is, like I said, is in Huntsville, Alabama. It's July 18th through the 20th, I think. That weekend, like 17th. I'm pulling up my calendar now. But yeah, 19, 20, and 21. We will all be there. Myself, Austin, Tori, and the other super nerd of the group, Andrew. I think we'll be doing there.
Yeah, I think
panels.
Andrew's going to come. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hope so. He's got panels he put on.
That's true. He does. He better be there.
So if you guys are more of our southerly guests in the Alabama, Georgia area, we will be there in Huntsville. It's always a more chill, relaxed time. I think we're going to be doing some stuff with the Awesome Cast, Basil and crew.
Yay.
Hopefully doing a live podcast reporting there. I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, we will be there in the middle of next month.
Yes, we will.
And,
very much looking forward to it.
And if anybody more are Carolina fans, I will be in Queen City. I think the first or second weekend of August. I just got my panel confirmations for that yesterday. So I'm doing a whole bunch of panels there as well. So if you're in Charlotte area, come out to Queen City.
Hell yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. So we want to keep this brief, but has there been anything anybody has been watching or playing or doing of any particular note that you would like our listeners to know about?
Well, I've been watching Final Fantasy VII Advent Children for an upcoming...
How is it?
What a coincidence. Me too.
Yeah, I was watching it for an upcoming podcast I'm part of. Pretty good movie. I can get into more detail
boring.
in a little while. But also, I've been playing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which, if you like Castlevania at all, get this game, because it's literally Castlevania, but not Castlevania because I don't know. I don't know why it's not Castlevania, but it should be. But it's very good, and for the past 2 hours before this podcast, I was playing Mario Maker 2, which is also good.
You know, I was just imagining, like, you know how sometimes they put quotes, like, from reviews on video games or Blu-rays or whatever?
Yeah.
That would be a great pull quote from you on Bloodstained to be like...
It's not Castlevania, but it should be.
Ryan McEntee.
God, I would kill for a new proper Castlevania, because they're just so good.
Our frothing demand for Castlevania increases.
Yeah.
Right.
That'll be a Patreon bonus. Donate $10 to us and you get like a video that's like 3 minutes long of me just like frothing at the mouth over Castlevania.
Patreon exclusive. We infect Ryan with rabies.
Wow.
Anyway.
At the $20 tier.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I'll go because I started talking. I haven't really been doing anything other than reading books. I'm reading this really good Japanese horror novel so far, which is a collection of short stories about a girl and her classmate who were obsessed with murders and all that kind of stuff.
What's it called?
Goth.
Goth?
Goth.
Sounds appropriate.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with anything so far. I think it was just a buzzword.
Oh, okay.
And then I just now purchased Final Fantasy VII on my Switch, so I guess that's what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, that's all I got.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I have been watching one other thing, but I forgot because I finished. So there was this show that was recently released on Netflix. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's called Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh,
and
boy.
That's another episode, Ryan. Stop.
Yeah.
Let somebody else
No,
go.
but I watched the entire series and both of the movies in a span of like 2 days.
Oh, oof, yeah.
Yeah.
You're a trooper, man. This is your second watch through of Ava?
Of the series, I've watched all the movies like a lot more because they were so good.
I'll mention something real brief.
Go for it.
Basically, I've been trying to utilize my Netflix subscription more recently because there's a wide variety of anime that is on it now and has been for a while. I recently started finally watching Agretsuko, the Sanrio show.
Yay.
I'm only like a couple episodes in, but I'm actually liking it a lot more than I thought, and it's very pretty to look at.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We gotta do an episode on that when you're done.
Nice.
Yeah, that is a very excellent show. Season 2 just came out maybe a week ago from the time of this recording.
Yep.
Again, staying awesome. It's a really good show.
Yep.
Very solid. All right, guys. Let's go and take a quick break, and we'll go into the review. as we mentioned on this episode, we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. The movie came out in 2005, and it is a CG animated film by Square Enix and their CG animation subsidiary Visual Works, who first started doing CGI cutscenes for the original Final Fantasy VII in 1997. The film was directed by Tetsuya Nomura, the character designer and battle visual director of the original Final Fantasy VII, and written by Kazushige Nojima, a longtime scenario writer for Square, that has basically worked on everything that they have done since 7.
Thank you, Papa Nomura.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Father. The movie was the top-selling anime title in North America in 2006 and was the 10th highest-selling anime title in North America in 2007. Advent Children Complete was released in 2009 with some redone scenes and a whole bunch of new ones added. We'll be talking a little bit later about exactly what those changes were and what some of the improvements were.
Interesting thing about its release also, its original release, Will and I found this out when we were doing research on the movie. Apparently, there's market research that ties this movie to driving up PlayStation 3 sales.
Yeah, I'd heard about that as well. Like, a lot of the consoles moved specifically because people were really excited about watching this movie, and it wasn't something that was ever available on DVD. It was Blu-ray only.
Right, and that's the thing is, I don't know if anybody remembers back in the Stone Age of 2006, but...
God damn it, Ryan.
But Blu-ray players, when they first came out, were like...
2009, you mean?
Yeah, I mean... When Blu-ray was new, it was absurdly expensive for seemingly no reason, and one of the cheapest options was to literally buy a PlayStation 3, which was also not cheap. So, like, the fact that...
But you got more bang for your buck, basically.
Yeah, it was really expensive, and, like, the fact that this drove up sales is probably because people were buying Blu-ray players to, like, watch this movie, and the PlayStation was a cheap one.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense, you know, considering, like... the crossover between Final Fantasy fans and people that would buy a PlayStation 3 is probably a perfect circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
If it's a Venn diagram, it's a circle.
I think the original version was released on UMD as well, right? About the same time that PSP came out.
That was something I wanted to mention real briefly because, as we know, Edwin is a big UMD fan, and I wanted to give him a shout-out because apparently Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, according to Wikipedia, is the second best-selling UMD movie.
That really does not surprise me.
What was the first?
Spider-Man 2. Which I think was like I think that was a bundle pack-in at one point for the PSP, so I don't count that. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children has sold 470,000 in sales, is what Wikipedia says. That's a lot of UMD.
On UMD.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's on UMD.
That's like an absurd amount.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I have it on UMD. I bought it for $1.99 at Lost Ark Video Games like 3 years ago.
I think I was there with you when you bought that, actually.
You probably were.
Yeah. Is it complete or just regular?
It's just regular. Complete was only ever released on Blu-ray.
Okay.
And they actually re-released both Complete and The Spirits Within on Blu-ray.
Spirits Within!
Oh, please, no, that movie's awful.
Yes!
But anyway, Sony re-released them just maybe a couple years ago in a brand new edition. I'm not sure if there's anything on disc that's different, but it does come with a nice like slip sleeve and everything. But anyway, the film was released to mixed but generally positive reviews, and I think a lot of the impressions from 2006 are still a lot of people's criticisms with this film even today, and we'll talk about what those are also a little bit later. The film started out as a short film project by Visual Works in the early 2000s that blossomed into a full film as part of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII project that included the mobile game Before Crisis, the PSP game Crisis Core, and the PS2 game Dirge of Cerberus, which all followed stories and characters introduced in the original Final Fantasy VII. It is interesting to note that Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, and had a large hand in the original story and development of Final Fantasy VII, but by this point in the development of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, he had not been with Square for many years by this point, and he did not work on Advent Children or the compilation at all. The compilation of Final Fantasy VII and Advent Children were almost exclusively Tetsuya Nomura and Kazushige Nojima's babies.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Nomura had taken over Final Fantasy by like around the time of 7.
Right. Shortly after The Spirits Within and Final Fantasy X came out, that's when Sakaguchi left, and I know he's formed his own video game company now, and has for quite some time, but I'm not really sure what they're working on. I don't really keep up with that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Spirits Within just like led him into a deep depression, which he was just like, Final Fantasy is dead, my child is no more, and he just like
Right.
he was just like, this is a perfect time to leave.
He has made
movie's
some
the pinnacle of
RPGs
cinema.
since then that are pretty solid, like Last Story on the Wii. So
Yeah.
he's still making games that are pretty
Okay.
alright.
But Sakaguchi's other company is called Mistwalker. It began operation in 2004, and it worked with Microsoft Game Studios to create a couple RPGs called Blue Dragon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was him. I didn't realize.
Yeah, Blue Dragon was him. They were also on Nintendo DS, which is awesome. And he also worked on Lost Odyssey,
Cool.
which is
cool.
another JRPG for the 360.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go around the circle and talk about how did each of you first come to watch Advent Children for the first time. At least for me, my coming to Advent Children was one of the earliest real anime things that I got into with like consciously knowing that it was anime. Tobias, you may groan, but you forget that I am still but a child. I'm a child of only 24 years old, so I'm a baby.
I'm baby.
But yeah, really what got me into anime as a medium was through playing Kingdom Hearts for the first time. I never really had that attachment that a lot of people did, like getting into anime through Pokemon, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, etc. Like that really wasn't my story.
So we
even
are
though I
counting
was-
Pokemon as getting into anime then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's anime. It counts.
Okay.
You had to watch the TV show, man. If you're in
Exactly.
Pokemon, you watched that
Oh,
TV
yeah.
show.
Oh yeah, like
Exactly.
yeah.
But yeah, so really whenever I picked up a copy of Kingdom Hearts for the first time is whenever I really started to more deeply consider Japanese media, with video games and anime being part of that. And getting into Kingdom Hearts 1 introduced me to Final Fantasy and introduced me to Cloud and Aerith and Yuffie and just a wonderful cast of characters. And then I bought a copy of Final Fantasy VII around the same time that I asked my uncle to make me a Netflix bootleg of Advent Children. Because at the time, he was like getting discs from Netflix and like copying them to give them to people, which don't tell anyone. But this was also like, 10 years ago or even longer than that, actually. And I, humbly requested, hey, can you rent this weird Japanese animation film with a title that makes no sense, that has a 7 in it, but apparently you can start there, and he made me a burned disc of it, and I watched it over and over and over and over again, and really, quite a while before I really got into the original game itself. And yeah, I guess my love of my burgeoning love of Final Fantasy really came from my history with Kingdom Hearts, getting into the characters that way, and yeah, just watching this movie over and over and over again, and really being into it, and just watching the Sephiroth fight on repeat. But I guess we'll go around and everybody else can sort of tell their story. So, Will, how did you first come to watch Advent Children?
So mine is a little bit of the opposite of what you just said. So I got into Kingdom Hearts because of Final Fantasy VII, because I was like, Cloud's in this game, and then it was all downhill from there. No, Kingdom Hearts is great. But yeah, I grew up playing Final Fantasy VII. My dad kind of introduced me to gaming a lot with the PS1, so that's like the nostalgic console for me. So of course we had Final Fantasy VII. It was my first JRPG outside of Pokemon. So it really connected with me. I really liked the story and the characters. And then a couple years later, I realized there was a movie and that it was a sequel. So I knew I had to get it. So I ended up buying. It's like it's not the complete one, but it's like the original movie, but it's like the collection on DVD, and it comes with like a script of the movie and like some other goodies. So I ended up buying that at my local used books and more store, and watched it and enjoyed it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mostly came from a background of I was already really familiar with the game and the characters and everything. So I already had a lot of this knowledge. I had played Crisis Core at that point already as well, so that I watched the movie like after that. So I was kind of late to the party by the time I actually watched it.
What about you, Tobias? Your story is probably a little different than ours.
Oh yeah. I was also more of like a Nintendo kid growing up, so I didn't play the original game when it came out. But a friend of mine let me borrow his PS1 and the copy of the game in 2003 or 2004. So I'd gotten like to the end of the first disc where spoilers, Eris dies, and
What?
I'd gotten to I had gotten to about that point, but just it was fun. And this is about the time I was also watched Ava for the first time, so a lot of my memories of like watching those Ava DVDs and playing FF7 are kind of commingled. A lot
That's
of
it's very thematically appropriate.
Exactly, yeah. So I realized I replayed FF7 like 3-4 years ago, and I'm realizing just a lot of that same like the whole nostalgia through the music and the scenarios is bring back a lot of the same memories of like watching Ava and that same period of time in my life. So in any case, I played this game until like 2004, and then right after they announced this movie is going to come out. So like I'm riding the hype wave. All of my friends who had already been Final Fantasy VII fans were really hyped for this movie, so I kind of jumped in on that wave. So the movie comes out. We don't get a US release, but somebody releases a fan sub of this thing. So like the week the fan sub comes out, everyone's freaking out. I somehow managed to teach myself how to author a DVD, not just burn a DVD, but like author a DVD video. Which I
So
kind of scrambled to put
you
that
did the
together.
complicated stuff.
Well, yeah. So at this point, I was in anime club in college, and we mostly just used disc the ADV sent us, or disc people would bring in. Mm-hmm. But this was before you were able to just plug in your laptop to a TV. Like our anime club used one of those old school TVs on a cart, kind of like you guys probably used in high school. Whenever the teacher didn't want to actually teach that day and just watch a video.
Yeah, we used to
My
play
favorite
on
anime,
that.
Bill Nye.
Yeah, so those TVs didn't have HDMI ports. That wasn't a thing. They didn't have the VGA computer ports. So there was no real way to hook up your computer to a TV. So we had to get creative. So I quickly taught myself how to author a DVD. I made 3 or 4 copies of it just in case the disc broke in the middle of the movie, which it did actually. It was in the middle of the movie and the disc broke and it froze.
What?
And I like stop! I got it! Everyone's like groaning, like we have to watch. We can't watch this movie. Quickly change out the disc.
Wait! Back up! The disc broke.
Well, no. Okay, the disc froze.
Oh, I see.
So I guess
Okay.
like the authoring process or whatever, like it just froze the movie. And being a little neurotic at that point, I prepared for that scenario. I very vividly remember that. In a room full of like 30, 35 nerds crammed into this room, this like really small college like classroom. Quickly changing that out, watching the movie. Everyone's like, freaking out, cheering at the entire movie. I'm just riding high on that wave, not really understanding half of what's going on the screen, which honestly didn't change with this viewing, by the way. But at that time, I watched it several times. It was a really enjoyable movie to watch, but I had not revisited it at all in the past 14 years. Again, 14 years this movie's like been out up until reviewing this podcast.
Tori, what about you?
So I think I would have been like 12 or 13 when this movie came out, so I was really heavily into going to the local like movie rental place, which wasn't a Blockbuster. I think we had Hollywood Video.
Mm-hmm.
And they were one of the few that had the Game Crazy, I think it was called Game Crazy attached on it. This was before we had GameStop in my town, and then they killed them off. But
In cold blood.
yeah, basically. So I would go in there so much, which meant, I begged my mom like 2 or 3 times a week, can you drive me into town so I can go rent a movie? But we had gone in there so much that I had started to become like friends with the staff and stuff. And so like thanks to them, I got into Kingdom Hearts. I got into J-horror, and was watching a lot of things I probably shouldn't have been watching at 12 and 13. But to piggyback off of that, my only knowledge of Final Fantasy was 10, 10-2, and Crystal Chronicles on the GameCube. And I had never touched another Final Fantasy because I was just so obsessed with 10 and 10-2 that I didn't care about anything else.
But your dad played Final Fantasy on the PS1, right?
Yes, he did, but I was so young that I have just very vague memories of like him bringing the PS1 home and he had that Cloud Sears t-shirt that
Oh my
I
gosh.
do very vividly remember him wearing that all the time. That was his like work around the house shirt.
If any of you listening have that shirt, please mail it to me.
Yeah, I have to see if he still has it. Probably not. But so I happen to remember like walking like through the store, and I was like, whoa, this is a Final Fantasy movie. And I had definitely watched Spirits Within before that. Because that was the one that came out first, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
So I had definitely watched that when I was young too, but I knew of Final Fantasy VII, did not know anything about it, so I picked up the case and I went to go talk to the guy that was in the game store, and I was like, have you watched this? And he's like, yeah, it's really good. You should get it if you don't know like what you want to watch. He's like, I think you'll really like it. And so I took it home and I watched it, and I loved it so much that I had to go out the next day and buy a copy of it. And I did nothing for a period of 3 years maybe, but watch that movie at least 2 or 3 times a week because I loved it that much.
Incredible.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan,
So-
what is your personal history with Advent Children?
All right, buckle up, boys, and Tori. So, Final Fantasy VII, I first heard about in my 4th grade class, and somebody called it FIFA to abbreviate Final Fantasy, and I'm just like, what is this soccer? And,
Oh my god.
and so
FIFA.
I then went to my piano teacher's house, and I used to go with my friend, and we would like, I would do my lesson, and he would do his, or vice versa, or whatever. And whenever one of us wasn't doing our lesson, we would play the PlayStation downstairs. So I played a fair bit of it at my piano teacher's. I don't think I actually ever got out of Midgar, but
You'd have to play for quite a while.
right. But like I got far, like pretty far, like enough to know I liked the game. And then I never played it for years after that, after I stopped taking lessons, because I never had access to it. And then I knew that I still liked the game though, and so I like looked up plot summary and everything, and so I knew everything about the game. And I was looking up details about Crisis Core, like I was looking up cutscenes, and I found on YouTube, ancient YouTube, I found the movie, and I think it was
Was it in 72 parts?
something like that. It was like 20 something parts. They were like 9 minutes and 59 seconds each, and it was an absurdly long playlist that I watched in Japanese, and I was annoyed about that at first because I prefer dubs personally, and I was just like, man, I have to read. But
I mean, when you're a kid, you have no patience for subtitles.
right, exactly. So like I first watched it on YouTube probably in like 2007, 2008, and then like 5 or 6 years ago, I was going through a breakup, and I had bought the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII, and I decided to play it. And so I was like, holy crap, what took me so long to actually finish this game? And so then immediately when I finished that, I looked up Advent Children complete and watched that like 6 years ago at this point. And yeah, Final Fantasy VII is easily my top 3 of Final Fantasies.
So, Will, I know this is an extremely difficult request for me to make, but can you, in your best way, in 30 words or less, describe the setup of Final Fantasy VII? I'm kidding about the 30 words. You take your time.
Okay. So Final Fantasy VII is about Cloud Strife, a very popular character for the youngins, know him from Smash Brothers and everything. He's a very popular character, probably the poster child for the Final Fantasy brand, I'd
For
say.
Guy
Basically,
with sword.
yeah,
Probably because he's edgy McEdgelord.
edgy McEdgelord, spiky hair, big sword.
I mean, he didn't have a Louis Vuitton collaboration, so
This is true.
Yeah. But his game's better.
Anyway, Will, please continue.
Sorry.
Please continue.
So you play as Cloud, the main character. He used to work with this company called Shinra, who's a big energy corporation that's sucking out the life planet juice for energy purposes.
Keep it PG, bro.
My apologies. The life stream. So you play as Cloud. The beginning of the game, he's working with this terrorist group called Avalanche, who they're trying to sabotage Shinra's activities to help save the planet. Very noble cause. Throughout the course of the game, you find out more stuff about Shinra being kind of evil, sucking out the planet energy, it's killing the planet. Then Cloud sees one of his older comrades, Sephiroth, who's a main antagonist, who is trying to basically summon this alien creature named Genova with alien cells that's already infused in him. It gets complicated from there, but basically you kind of work with fighting off Sephiroth, make sure it doesn't end the world by having a giant meteor crash on the planet, and eventually Cloud kind of goes through, meets a lot of friends that help him out on his journey to help save the planet and stop its destruction. That's kind of a very basic synopsis. Real brief minor spoils, the game does end with you winning, and the planet helps you beat the meteor.
Yup.
Yeah, that was one thing about Final Fantasy VII, which fans were sort of so curious as to what exactly happened at the end of the game because it was left so ambiguous.
Was it, though?
And
I think so.
I mean, arguably. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the only thing you really like when the game ends. Like you see Holy fighting Meteor, and then you see a big explosion. And then it says 500 years later, and then it's Red 13 and his cubs like on that cliff that you see in the beginning of Advent Children. So it is kind of ambiguous as to what exactly happens to Cloud, Tifa, Barrett, and all of our other amazing friends.
I guess that's true, yeah.
You see that the planet lives on, but it's more so what happened to the characters you just spent 80 plus hours with, because besides Red 13,
Exactly.
you don't really know.
Right.
I assumed personally because Red 13 survived that so did everyone else.
Yeah, I mean that definitely makes sense, but you don't know. There's a lot there. It's not clear.
I could have sworn at the very end you see them all getting on the airship.
No, I think that is before all of that, all the big explosion happens.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but anyway, and so that's sort of why, a lot of people find Advent Children somewhat strange because it totally gets rid of all that ambiguity, and there's a argument to be made that that's not necessarily good. But I guess we can talk about that later.
I don't think that's the real complaint that most people have.
No,
with
most
Advent
people
Children.
most people want a story to get an epilogue or something. So I was personally very glad we had a continuation.
Yeah, but sometimes stories are made better because they're more ambiguous. I don't know. I mean, I understand that that's not the major complaint for some people, but I think that even in its ambiguity, the ending of Final Fantasy VII is still good.
Yeah.
It doesn't really necessarily need a follow-up, but we have one, and we're about to talk about it. We actually have many, at least two.
Yeah.
At least two.
So, Ryan,
four follow-ups we have to Final Fantasy VII.
Right. Can you give us the setup of Advent Children, then?
Okay. In a world where Cloud defeated Sephiroth. I can't keep that up for very long. Okay, so basically, we know Cloud beats Sephiroth and everybody lives happily ever after. Or do they?
But do they?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm getting there. I'm building suspense.
Okay.
So everybody lives happily ever after. Or do they? So we flash forward to 2 years after they beat Sephiroth in the Great North Cave, and we see the Turks doing Turk things, and they're apparently good guys now, and they're on pretty good terms with the protags, which I was cool with because I really liked seeing their interactions with them. And basically there's a effectively leprosy but alien is spreading around Midgar, and it kind of gave me a bit of a Chernobyl vibe because I just finished watching that series as well. and they were just like, stay away from the Mako reactors, and I'm just like, this is basically Chernobyl but Final Fantasy and also leprosy. And so anyways, alien leprosy is running rampant through everybody, and they're just like, this is the planet getting even with us for killing everybody, and I'm just like, no, because it's affecting children. Children didn't create Mako reactors. And so it turns out, plot things happen, and there's like these 3 people who are basically mini Sephiroths who are just like, mother, over and over again, and they are trying to attack Cloud for reasons that are not honestly explained very well. And they basically just want to be one with Jenova again and resurrect Sephiroth, and Cloud is trying to not let that happen, all while trying to rescue children and cure space leprosy.
Yeah, that's one way to describe the film, I think.
If you want to add anything, go ahead.
It's actually
I
called
think...
Geostigma.
Yeah, it's called Geostigma. Thank you. I was completely blanking on the name.
Yes, Geostigma. Yeah, I think that generally sort of sets it up, but and this can be something that we discuss later, but with the original Final Fantasy, it has a very set and very clear set of themes, and at least for me, it's a little bit hard to hammer down seeing those same exact themes in Advent Children, but I think that the themes of Advent Children are slightly different.
Grief was definitely a major theme of Advent Children.
For a second there, I thought you said grease, like bacon grease.
Yeah.
What movie did I watch? What the?
We're supposed to watch
Do you
Grease?
not see John Travolta as Cloud?
So yeah, I think that's a really good literal synopsis of the movie itself. That's pretty much what happens. There's a lot of events that are nigh incomprehensible if you've never played the original game at all. So don't try to watch this movie if you have no experience with FF7. You will not have a good time, I don't believe. But I feel like you want to do this now, Austin?
That was Tori, not me.
Tori, you want to do this, Tori?
Yes, I'm bringing out 13-year-old me. You don't know what you're talking about. Go on.
Did you actually enjoy it when you didn't know anything
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
I loved every ridiculous, gratuitous moment of that movie.
And I think that speaks to something that resonates with a lot of people about Advent Children. But go ahead and finish your thought, Tobias. We'll get to that.
I will say when you mentioned that, 'cause I did think about that in the earlier rewatch. I was thinking the plot makes barely any sense to someone who's actually experienced the games. But I think a lot of the visuals and the fight scenes in particular hold up, as well as the general visual motifs of FF7 as a whole. So my general recommendation would be, if you've never played FF7, don't watch it for the plot. Watch it for the Bishi boys jumping around, hitting each other with swords. Because
to be honest, that's pretty much what I watched it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's really good at that. Well, maybe not perfect, but it's a good example of a mid-2000s anime action type of show. I feel like it's successful in that. But where was I going with this train of thought for Tori so rudely and loudly interrupted me?
You just said moments ago that I'm loud and annoying, so
Exactly.
there you have it.
No, I feel like, one thing, and to tie back into what Ryan was saying earlier, I feel like a lot of people that know about FF7 in the public consciousness do consider Cloud edgy McEdgelord. But on my replay a few years back, and even this, I don't think that's a fair assessment of Cloud as he actually is presented. I see him struggling a lot with that. I mean, you're going to anyway, so yeah.
I was just gonna say that this movie, especially in the end, kind of changes that, and I'm sure that's something we'll end up talking about later. So yes, it is an unfair snap judgment from a lot of people.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if it's just, again, that relationship to Evangelion. And remember, this did come out about the same time that Ava did, so I feel like there is a reason a lot of those themes kind of go hand in hand. That we look at the main protagonist, and it's easy to skim over. In Cloud's case, a lot of the stuff he goes over just because he's the big badass with a sword. But I did actually, again, replaying FF7 a few years back, really did kind of relate to the struggles he goes through. He's just kind of thrust in this situation, like half trying to find his identity, trying to reach this ideal version of a hero that he's trying to reach forward. And even in this movie, even defeating Sephiroth, spoiler alert, before the movie itself, he's still trying to, I guess, reach that platonic ideal of being that hero, and he finds himself wanting over and over again. And I feel like you see that a lot in his interactions with Tifa, both in the game and here. I really like Tifa's character. She's the only sane person in any of the media.
Basically,
of this, she's the only
she is the true main character of Final Fantasy as Final Fantasy VII as a franchise.
She really is. Like, you've got all these characters that are either like crazy out there, or Cloud that's just moping around, in this movie, and she just come home, like, come on, get over it,
go to bed.
Exactly. But I guess I did kind of enjoy the thematic there, as far as him trying to find himself. I feel maybe it drags on a little much, but I think that it does help redeem his character more so than just being the bog standard Final Fantasy spiky-haired protagonist that a lot of people give that series hell for.
Yeah.
Right, and I think a lot of people have sort of retroactively coded Cloud in Advent Children as being Cloud overall, and like the modern interpretation of Cloud, like in Dissidia or in Kingdom Hearts or whatever, is very, very informed by his Advent Children version.
Well, I honestly blame Kingdom Hearts for making him edgy, because...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true.
That came first, and he was edgy as hell on that.
Man,
that's very true. He's very brooding. He's very mopey, and he doesn't...
His character design is just kind of very much a Hot Topic goth.
I love his band-aids on his Buster Sword.
I know.
Don't you guys love how on the nose the lone wolf imagery is? Don't you guys just love that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nomura's so subtle.
Yeah.
But I guess we can talk about the design a little bit. Just like in contrast between Final Fantasy VII, the original, and this film is so drab.
Yes.
It is so drab. And I'm not necessarily saying that as a negative thing, because I think this film, while being 10 to 14 years old, still looks very good from a production standpoint, in terms of its animation and its design and whatnot. But it's almost a color-free film, with the exception of the live stream and Vincent Valentine.
Yeah, everybody else was wearing
flowers.
black.
Yes, lots of black, lots of gray, and it stands in a lot of contrast to the original game, which is very colorful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I guess if you take into account that literally everything has been destroyed,
yes,
and so it's just wrecked buildings and metal and just sharpness and stuff everywhere, it would make sense that it should feel like there's this dirty, grimy, gray overlay.
That's one of my that's one of the smaller things about the film, is like the whole movie takes place on like Midgar's edge. I think they call it like Edge of Midgar or something in the movie, because it's implied this whole city's gone.
It's the outer area of Midgar.
Yeah, and like that area looks so like trashy, like obviously because it got destroyed like 2 years prior, but like there's the world of Final Fantasy VII has so many great locales. So, like, I'm kind of a little annoyed that, like, it was only in that one area for, like, the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I do like Midgar as an area.
In the Hidden City as well, or the Forgotten City.
That's
that was
true.
One of my
There's
favorite
like,
locales
like 2
of the
scenes
game.
there.
So,
yeah, 2 places,
Overall, like, I do like Midgar as a location. I did enjoy seeing it here, but I agree. Final Fantasy... And I think it's the problem with people's memories of FF7 as a whole, is they remember Midgar. They remember, Cloud versus Sephiroth, this whole battle between these two Bishi boys, and forgetting that FF7 is pretty fun and colorful outside of that area. I cannot wait for the dolphin jump minigame to come back in the remake.
Yes.
That one little minigame defines, and like you mentioned earlier, the rifle swinging minigame, like that is FF7 to me, of course. But yeah, no, I do kind of like seeing Midgar, but you're right. There's not a whole lot of diversity in set design here.
Yeah.
So what do we think of our villains here in Advent Children? So we've got, we've arguably got a couple, like, tiers of sub-villains. It's like we've got the Turks, but they're more sort of like pseudo-allies at this point, like anti-hero sort of deal.
I didn't even consider them to be villains in this one because they were like straight up working with them.
Yeah, but we also got to consider what their motivations were. It was sort of the enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of deal. It's not like they weren't off to somewhat nefarious purposes.
They wanted to rebuild Shinra.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
Reno
Yeah.
even spills the beans, and that's one of the reasons why Cloud is so unwilling to work with them in the beginning, where Reno is basically like, hey, Cloud, you can work together with us, and we can rebuild Shinra. And he literally says, not interested, and walks out,
Yeah.
which is a wonderful scene.
Yeah.
And Rufus sort of has his own very somewhat unclear motivations, but they're not necessarily benevolent per se. So we've got the Turks, but again, they're more like anti-heroes. And then we've got our Sephiroth remnants, which struck me as interesting.
I can explain. Yeah, I can explain each one of them like in a very simple way. You had the one that cried a lot. You had the one
my
that
favorite.
You had the one that didn't say anything but liked guns. And then you had the one who screamed mother 24/7.
So there actually is something that I learned about them recently, and it absolutely makes sense. I wish I had had this knowledge. So Kadaj was supposed to be like Sephiroth's pure hatred, but also like love for humanity or something like that. Lowe's, which was the buff guy, I think,
The puncher.
was supposed to be just it was supposed to be just like his raw brute strength. And then Yazoo.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he symbolized, but they all had
He
something
had
specific.
his hair.
Yeah, exactly.
His hair, yeah.
I wish Tori, I wish the movie was at all clear about that. It is not.
I mean, not on a surface level, no. But if you take
No.
a few minutes and think about it, like you can kind of see it. But like it still is very,
yeah.
very ambiguous.
I guess it makes sense, but it wasn't really well portrayed.
Yes.
Yeah, it's poorly executed, which I think is somewhat of an idea of, forgive me, Father, because I'm about to speak ill of you, but I think that is one of the major detriments of Nomura's storytelling style whenever he's left to his own devices, is that he has a lot...
Too
he
metaphorical.
He has a lot of these what wouldn't it be cool if ideas and does not really know how to present them in the
Yes.
most coherent way.
So
Right.
And
really
that
what you're
comes through
saying is
everything
that...
he does.
So what you're saying is Nomura is the Tomino of video games.
Yeah.
In some ways, yeah. He's a little bit of a funky dude.
Father, I will forever love you because you gave me life. You brought me into this world. But cool it.
Yeah, and then he wears socks with sandals. So what do we expect?
He does.
Wait,
He
really?
does.
Cargo shorts
And cargo
And
shorts.
cargo shorts.
in the year of our Lord 2019, going to E3 with cargo shorts.
God, that hurts me so much.
Not like you're acting like half the attendees there weren't also in cargo shorts. Come
Yeah.
on.
I mean, that's
Real
fair.
here.
But yeah, and I guess talking about Nomura a little bit, and this movie and Kingdom Hearts 2 were in development at the exact same time. So very obviously, Cloud and Tifa and Aerith show up in Kingdom Hearts 2 with their Advent Children redesigns. But another thing that didn't really hit me until watching this movie recently is that Nomura seems to have recycled some of the concepts that he introduced in Advent Children. Most notably, the group of people who are actually an amalgamation of one other person that all wear similar outfits and have the same color eyes and just variations on the same exact look. Doesn't this sound familiar? Kingdom Hearts 3 / Dream Drop Distance.
Yep.
Yeah.
But let's not get on the Kingdom Hearts train a little bit too long.
Please, let's go.
Because
Yeah.
we'll be
Please.
here all day. But
That's our 17-part series coming soon.
so as we've sort of outlined already, it's like we've talked about Cloud a little bit, and a lot of people's complaints about Cloud is that due to this movie existing, it sort of undoes some of his character development from Final Fantasy VII. So from you guys that have played this game more in depth than I have, what do you think about that? Because I see where people are coming from, but I also see it in a different way. So if you guys would like to elaborate on why you think that is or isn't the case.
Well, so like in Final Fantasy VII, he didn't really have like personality beyond what we read in text. So a lot of it was like what you kind of associated in your mind. but like we saw a lot of like Beautiful Mind style stuff from him in the game. And then here we were seeing like an entirely different side of him, like one that was trying to put that aside and like move on with his life, albeit he was doing it fairly poorly. But I enjoyed seeing a different side of all the characters, because Tifa was definitely more confident and less like, what do we do now, Cloud? Like, she was the one who was telling him, you know, dilly-dally, silly-shally, or whatever the hell it was.
Right.
So, yeah.
That is true.
Yeah, I do wish we got more from the other characters, but, you know.
Yeah. And like we sort of outlined, like Tifa in some ways is a major star of this film, and I think that her character development from being very like unsure of herself and very sort of reliant on Cloud as the de facto hero, as her savior somewhat in the original game. She is very self-sufficient in Advent Children. She is really the Cloud's rock that really pulls him along out of this like woe is me depression that he's found himself in, and I think that makes Tifa a very strong piece of this film overall.
Right.
I agree.
I feel like in the game as well, like a lot of it is about Cloud. He starts off being kind of on his own, not really wanting to really get close to anyone in Avalanche and everything, and like throughout the game he makes friends and kind of opens up a bit to his party and everything. And in this movie, of course, he's obviously grieving for like the loss of his friends who had died previously. Spoils.
And also probably a little bit of guilt over the fact that he had a very big role in that.
Very true. But like even in the game, Tifa is also kind of that rock that helps bring him back, like towards the end. And I feel like this movie had, I guess, very similar beats into like Cloud kind of starts off being on his own. He's kind of sad, and then Tifa helps bring him back. And like that, the game did that, and I think the game did it well in the sense of like him kind of just accepting his past and learning to move on. And this movie was a lot of him doing that again, but more so on the lens of, I feel bad because my friends are dead.
I see. So you're saying that the game was more so about Cloud coming to terms with himself, and the movie was more about him coming to terms with his guilt? Is that what you're trying to say?
Essentially. I just feel like in terms of like the progression of how that's shown, it follows a similar pattern in the game and in the movie. Is kind of what I'm
I'd hazard to phrase it like this. Like, the game was more Cloud finding himself, and the movie was him coming to terms with what he found.
That's fair.
Yeah, coming to what he found, and also one of the major themes of the movie is like getting over like your grief, your sins. They even ask Vincent, I think, in the middle of the movie, you know, how do I begin to forgive myself? And we even look at the disease, geostigma, again, stigma being a thing in there, where he's found you know, that he's able to save the world with this group 2 years back, but really all he's done is delay the inevitable with this disease and what Sephiroth has already put into place here. So has he really saved the world, or has he really just kind of made it worse in some way? You know, in seeing Denzel and the other children suffer under this alien leprosy, as it were. And I think it's what he struggles with is like, well, did I really succeed? Did I really do the right thing? Or did Eris die for nothing?
Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a moment where after the big sort of dragon battle and the Avalanche crew is on Sid's ship and Cloud is fighting Kadaj, there's that scene where Tifa is basically talking about like how, at least from her perspective, they've sort of lost that same fire that they had 2 years ago, but it seems like Cloud has found it again.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of speaks to what Cloud's arc was intended to be for Advent Children. It's like finishing the work that he, whether he was consciously aware of it or not, like had not finished yet. And that was sort of finally ridding the world of Sephiroth by them, I guess, defeating him, but not really. Which again begs the question of like, I don't know, did we need to retread these waters necessarily? I'm not sure. It's like, is Final Fantasy VII enough to say this story is over, or is Final Fantasy VII made better by the existence of this film? I mean, I think that's kind of an open question, but I don't know.
I think it definitely stands on its own, but this definitely added a different layer. But Sephiroth being back was 1000% fan service. He was not needed. He was not needed in this movie at all.
No. But I like the little touches of like him having those moments in his subconscious, I guess, with Aerith and Zack, and them giving him the courage to keep going and keep trying to figure it out, to keep trying to figure things out, versus just like flat out giving up because he doesn't feel like he can do it. Like, yeah, it's a really dire situation, and just to see him keep pushing through that because he knows he has those people that believe in him, and it's all worth it for that one scene at the very end where we get to see him crack that little baby smile. And he's like,
Yeah.
I do have friends. I have people that care about me, and I can keep on going because of that.
Yeah.
So
Zack as a whole actually is very interesting to me because they used a lot of footage from Crisis Core, which is great. That's a great game that I would also love to see be remade at one point. But in Final Fantasy VII, you could go through the game without learning exactly what happened to Zack beyond the fact that he exists and he was Aerith's boyfriend. Like, you don't know much about him besides, like, this is the dude who Cloud thought he was because, mind-boggling things. You don't necessarily have to find out what happened to Zack or, like, the living legacy thing. So them adding that was a nice touch. But, like, it's, to me, like, I don't know how I would feel if I didn't really know what happened to Zack before I watched this, because him just standing over the Buster Sword and, like, leaving it as a memorial for Zack, basically, was, like, very impactful to me, because he took it as, like, I will continue your legacy, and then he, like, left it as a memorial. Granted, the sword looked like it had been through hell and back, so he's like, I kind of need a new one. Or several, as it were.
Several.
But, yeah, Zack was handled very well, I thought, but it's still interesting to me because, like, he's kind of an oddity that they didn't actually make necessary to understand in the main game.
And I think it strengthens Cloud's overall arc in Advent Children by including more of Zack. And I can almost guarantee you that they wanted to at least up Zack's presence in the film because Crisis Core was in development.
Yeah.
So they wanted to sort of tease this connection to this character that a lot of people would really connect with, because Zack is a very good boy, a very good protagonist
he's like
of his own game.
a human puppy.
Yeah, he's a very good boy, and I'm glad that they decided to highlight him a little bit more in this, in anticipation of Crisis Core. And I would echo you, Ryan, as well, that I really hope that they do an HD remaster of that one day.
Agreed.
Yeah.
If we got Final Fantasy VIII, anything is possible.
Right.
I've got thoughts on what they should do with the Final Fantasy VII remake as a whole, but I'll save that for the end of this podcast, because it's a very hot take, but it would literally print Square money if they did it.
I mean, I guess to go back to your original question, though, like, does this movie stand alone? And, you mentioned earlier with the ending of the original game being very ambiguous, and you asked the question, do we need to explore that space? And, honestly, I come away from this movie thinking it's pure fan service. Like,
Yeah.
we talk about the themes, and I try to, like, pull something out of Cloud's development. But honestly, I think as a whole, this movie is fluff. Really. I don't think it's really necessary. I feel like the fight scenes, while fun to watch in some ways and not in others, I honestly left the movie wondering, well, I don't really understand why.
Right. It's like Final Fantasy VII is so wrapped up in its own thing that it doesn't really need to be followed up. But I mean, their decision to follow it up, I mean, is not necessarily bad. It is just kind of what you said. And a lot of the reason why it resonated with me as a kid is honestly very shallow reasons, because I like cool fight scenes.
It looked cool.
And it looked cool, and I think for a lot of people, that's what they like about this film, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just not necessarily deep or thoughtful or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I mean, and kind of going into, I talked about the original hype that surrounded that movie. The game had been out for 7 years, I think. People were still, were talking a lot about this game. It was still topping the charts of, best game of all time, like right before, Ocarina of Time, and it's kind of that rivalry you see between those two of, which one of these is the best game of all time on these listicles and whatnot. So people were still like really into this movie as a whole.
Yeah.
So when that came out, people were really hyped for it, and I think that hype certainly carried people through enjoying it originally. I mean, it did me and all my Anime Club friends. But watching it again 14 years later, it feels like definitely a sign of the times, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
But couldn't you use the same argument about the prequel and sequel games? Like, did those really need to be a thing either?
Crisis
I don't know
Core
if
was
I haven't
very
played it.
good.
Well, I think Crisis Core sort of has its own identity. Dirge of Cerberus is, again, kind of fluffy.
Yeah.
And more like...
They wanted to
more
give
like-
more of a focus to Vincent.
Is
So,
it
yeah, do
an
you-
unfair assessment or an unfair hot take to say that Vincent is like Boba Fett?
Vincent is like Boba Fett.
I could agree.
He really is.
I really could.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
Vincent
the
is
difference
entirely
between Vincent and
missable
Boba
in the
Fett
game,
is
and like
that
most
eventually
people,
Vincent
most
became
people
awesome.
I knew,
Okay.
like growing up, were like when I mentioned Vincent, like because I had looked up all the stuff and like found like, oh, there's literally a party member who's like a vampire werewolf that has a gun, and like I asked one of my friends, I was like, what did you think of Vincent? And he was like, literally who?
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
Between him and Yuffie, it's
Yeah.
like, wait.
well,
you
Yuffie
know
is
characters?
Yuffie is a lot less missable because if you're just doing
Leave
random
her
encounters, you'll
alone.
run into her.
Yeah.
But
That's
I think
true, but that is kind of confusing. Like if you played Final Fantasy VII very bare bones and beat the game, there's an entirely there's a strong possibility that when Vincent, if you never encountered Yuffie or Vincent in the game and they show up in the movie, you're just like, excuse me, what?
That's crazy.
See,
Yuffie much less so, but yeah.
That's my main thing about the movie is I feel like, and maybe Tori can talk more about this, but like having not as much, like if you just walk into the movie without knowing like some of the smaller, more refined details about the game, like why they always refer to Cloud as like brother, or like the relationship with the Turks, and like even the main party members, because the movie is mostly a Cloud story and Sephiroth story. So by the time the party members come in, Tifa just looks at Denzel and she's like, oh yeah, these are our friends. So it's like, okay, sure. And like all these crazy wacky characters show up and everyone, but like I don't know. I feel like it's hard to
And I think
judge
that-
based on
Yeah.
my prior knowledge of I already know everything about it. Like what's it like
Yeah.
experiencing that for a cohesive storytelling aspect?
So my thing was when I first watched this movie, I understood the very like surface level of the plot. Like, okay, they're trying to bring this guy back so they can destroy the world, and now all these kids are infected, and we have a child cult, and like it's not hard to understand the like surface level of the plot.
Yeah.
But there are little things in the dialogue that you can kind of pick up on. Like I do believe that in the beginning they talk about Cloud being part of Soldier.
Yeah, and,
So
and,
you can-
there is that monologue that Marlene has where she basically, in a very bare bones fashion, sums up what happens in the original game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
very
Marlene monologue
straightforward.
though was absent from the original movie.
No, it was there. It
When
was
she's
there.
hiding in Vincent's cape, right?
No, at the
No.
very
Very
beginning.
beginning.
of the
Okay,
film.
very, very
Where she
beginning.
explains
Okay.
the plot of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, that's in the original movie.
Was it?
So
Yeah.
if you are like listening to these little things in the dialogue, you can kind of piece together like, okay, well, Cloud must have been with these guys, and they're trying to find their mother, and
Which was this beheaded alien lady. And all
yeah,
this.
right.
Yeah.
So you can kind of put it together, but you won't. I do agree with you guys sort of on the sense that like you don't really put everything together 100% without the little bit of prior knowledge, especially when, like you said, some of the wacky characters show up, like Vincent, or when you
Cat
talk,
She.
yeah, with his Scottish accent. Well, yeah, when they're all on the airship and they're like, okay, I guess these are our pals.
Yeah.
So
Just imagine watching the movie up to that point and like, all right, I have no clue whose Japanese characters are. Why are they?
Exactly.
Why is the motorcycle like doing flips and stuff? Why is he
I
got
know.
sword and a sword? And who the hell is this cat character?
And this
What is
big
this
dog.
ninja girl or this dude with the guns on the gun? What the hell is that?
Well, the
I
movie
know,
opens
but-
with the end of 7 with Red 13 and his children looking at.
Yeah,
Depending
but if-
on which one
but
you're
if you're-
watching.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're watching this movie for the first time, you've probably already forgotten that by the time they show up.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was referring more to like catchy.
Yeah,
Like,
catchy.
what is a little cartoon character? What the?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think it really takes away anything going into it without knowing anything about the game. And you know, once I get through this game, I'll probably have a different opinion. But you know, taking the movie for what it is, that it's like core
Yeah.
is that it's just pretty computer animation
Right.
with
So this
Yeah.
film is a Buster sword that cuts both ways.
Yeah.
If you see what I did there, because it is a film that is, I think, deep enough to resonate with some Final Fantasy VII prior fans, and vapid enough to resonate with people who just know Cloud from Kingdom Hearts.
But see, I knew Cloud before Kingdom Hearts, so
Whatever.
yeah.
Personally,
Yeah.
The principle's the same. The
Personally, he's
yeah.
my best friend. He saved me once. Can I? Oh,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna backtrack for 2 seconds because you had made a note about should this movie have been made a game, and
That was an original consideration. Like, whenever they were first
Mm-hmm.
planning this film, they thought for a brief second, maybe we'll make this into a game. But,
my
yeah,
my
continue.
thing is that the pacing of the movie is really weird. So they would have had to have done a lot of fluffing and all sorts of stuff to have made this into, I think, a full-length game.
Yeah.
If it had been like a short spin-off episode or something, sure, but they weren't really doing stuff like that with games quite yet at that point. But I think it works best as a movie, even if it didn't need to be in existence at all.
As it
Well, that's the
stands,
thing.
as it is, it would have been a terrible game. But if they
Absolutely.
made it into a game, they obviously would have like reworked a lot of stuff.
There would-
But
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
There would be a
So just
lot
to
of
piggyback off
motorcycle segments in the game.
Oh man. They just like piggyback off that. I do think the pacing is kind of an issue in this movie, in which I kind of want to tie into like the whole complete version, because there were a lot of scenes they added here, which I felt half the time were really great interstitial scenes between the stuff that was happening in the original, but also a lot of fluffy stuff that kind of bored me and I thought went out off track. Well, while the general plot is pretty basic here, we go from, you know, everything up to the final like 30-45 minutes fight scene, a gratuitous fight scene that just never stops.
Yeah.
Oh,
a lot of
Tobias,
that-
let me briefly correct you. I will say that the second hour of the film is basically one long fight, because
It
I wrote
is,
it down.
yeah.
Yeah.
but anyway, like I feel like some of the interstitial scenes, like they added a lot with the Turks that I thought were really good way to glue the basic plot points together. I thought some of the Denzel stuff was pretty cool as well to flesh out his character, but some of it just felt really silly when you have all these anime characters, you know, fighting this big dragon dude, and his big scene is he threw water at one of the dogs.
The dragon dude,
no.
by the way, was actually Bahamut. It was Shin Bahamut, but that's like a small
Yeah.
tangent. But like, we weren't actually sure when we were watching. We were like, "Is that Bahamut?" And I looked it up, and yes, it was.
Yeah, it's one they made just for the movie, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
the
appeared in
narration.
stuff since then, but yes, it
Yeah.
was.
If they
originally
had
just for the movie.
Yuna, this never would have happened.
But yeah, like so all the new stuff. Some parts of it I like, parts of it I don't. Did anybody else? I know you guys kind of jumped into it a little later than I did, but did anybody notice a noticeable quality, video quality between the new stuff and the old stuff?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know one thing for sure that they did is they went back in and changed up some textural things. Most notably in like some effects work in specific scenes. Like for example, during the final fight in the original version, there was a lot fewer like feathers going around whenever Cloud was fighting Sephiroth.
Okay.
They changed up the blue lighting effects on Cloud
Which
whenever he's
looks
doing his
amazing
yeah
now.
it looks very good. They changed up and they made it like more vibrant and more visible. It's been a while since I watched the original, so the original one might not have even had that blue effect. I'm not even sure.
I don't think it did because it stuck out enough to me as not remembering it, and today is the first time that I have ever seen the complete version. So it stuck out enough, that and like Cloud getting all bloodied up.
Oh yes, lots of blood.
Yes, that stuck out enough to me that I was like, I don't remember this.
Right,
So
right.
well, and that was some new footage.
I think that was a cool way to show off the game mechanics, because they never really use materia because they don't have materia, except, of course, the summon for Bahamut Sen. But,
Yuffie has plenty of it.
Yuffie has it all.
but like she doesn't really like they never
No.
really use it because they don't
Right.
have it. But all of those blue effects I interpreted, and again I didn't notice them until today either, Tori. I interpreted them being him using the limit break, so that was a cool way.
Yes.
to add limit
That's what it
breaks.
was at the very end, like right before he does Omni Slash. Is yes, he was using limit break, but other than that, no, they just used a lot of visual blue
No,
effects.
he uses climb hazard at one point, several times actually.
He uses
when
his
blue
limit break
effects.
abilities, but like his true limit break was when Sephiroth threw him into the building. Cloud starts glowing blue and then just starts
Well,
wailing
he-
on him. That was
Well, he
like
does that.
technically his limit break.
I mean, he does that a couple times throughout the fights. So, I mean, I could see him doing it. I guess if we're talking game mechanically, I mean, you wouldn't be using limit breaks several times a fight.
Yeah.
Except, it's an hour freaking fight. So, yeah, you probably could
So
use
was
several limit breaks.
was anyone else also deeply upset that there was never a segment where Tifa is fighting and then like a slot machine pops up on the screen?
Yes.
Man, no.
I had that thought, and I think I mentioned it to Will. I was just like, so when are they gonna? How are they gonna show the slot machine limit breaks? Because
I love that one.
Huge missed opportunity there.
It's her pausing, saying, "Hang on 1 second," and then pulling it out of her back pocket.
I thought it was really cute with the one fight that Tifa has with one of the antagonists, and when after she
Yeah.
beats him up, his phone does the
punchy
fanfare.
Sephiroth.
Yeah, punchy.
Yes, I love that.
That was a really cute
It was
bit.
very good. Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
I think
And that was just a wonderful fight in general.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
I
a
wish
really good one.
I wish we saw more like fights with the. I know again it was a very big Cloud story, but I wish we just saw more of the main cast as well. Like that Tifa fight was great. That was like the only
Oh, man.
non-Cloud fight really in the movie. Besides like
we got
the
that. We got that very
montage.
brief moment in the God, I can't talk. The Forgotten
Oh, with
City.
Vincent.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
very
brief, though.
brief though.
That fight scene in the church where
Yeah.
like Laws grabs her by the legs and is swinging her around, and then
Yeah.
she gets thrown and does that Spider-Man move on the wall. I was like,
That was
"Ooh."
amazing. The-
I was going to save that to
I
like,
had
the
a very
one-
funny
the one
thought
scene
about
that
that,
they
wow.
used
that
it
particular scene actually is they had a guy credited. I did not realize that a lot of this movie was mocap also. They had a thing in the credits. They were like fight choreographer, and I'm just like, how the hell did they mocap that?
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, and do you want to
Yeah.
go into that now? Or?
Sure. So yeah, Visual Works, they did and continue to do most of like the pre-rendered content for any Square Enix property. Like they've worked on Kingdom Hearts. Their debut was actually on the original Final Fantasy VII. So like all the pre-rendered cutscenes that are in like full 3D and stuff like that from FF7 were them, and it's Square's in-house like 3D CG anime production team, and they basically do all of that stuff. So anything that you see from Square that's like pre-rendered content like that, it's all from Visual Works, and yeah, a lot of the stuff that they do is mocapped compared to a lot of other like 3D CG anime, which isn't. And I think that's sort of what has helped this movie and other Square animations like this sort of stand the test of time. Like, if you watch even the opening cutscene from Kingdom Hearts 1, which came out in 2002, I mean, it still looks like worlds better than some 3D CG anime that's coming out right now.
Yeah.
And I know that was extremely like difficult to do back in the early 2000s and the late 90s and stuff like that. Like even if you go back and look at Final Fantasy VIII, like those cutscenes, I mean they're a little fuzzy, a little grainy, a little chunky, but you know they look really good.
Yeah.
You're the most handsome man at the ball.
Exactly. But just visual works, their animation style is very, very impressive. And I think just to go back a minute to what you guys said about the Tifa and Laws fight, Nomura on the original Final Fantasy VII was credited as a let me look it up real quick. He was credited as
he was a character designer, I believe.
Yes, he was a character designer, and he is also credited as the battle visual director, and that's what he's credited as in a lot of things. So, and he has a very distinct fighting style in his direction, which is very good, very visceral, really great camera work, really great commandment of his own weird physics world, which if you look at things like Final Fantasy VII Advent Children and other things with like action scenes that he has directed, they're all very unique and very visually interesting. And honestly, I think that's Nomura's biggest specialty, is that he has this amazing flair for making iconic fight scenes like these and directing them really well and knowing where to put the camera. If only somebody could take the script away from me.
That reminded me of something that stuck out to me, and now that you put it in words, makes a lot of sense. But the scene where Kadaj and Cloud are fighting in the building, there's a lot of like angular camera shots, and they're like tilted or upside down or stuff like that, and that's stuff that you would see in like a physical live action movie. So to see that in something like this was really cool.
Yeah.
And there's just some insane nonsense that they do, especially in that Sephiroth fight, where they're like the buildings are falling and they're like fighting against each other.
They had Superman syndrome real bad in this one.
Yeah,
they destroy like the entire surroundings to have their
or where
little fight.
Or where they kept tossing Cloud up and up and up and up.
Yeah. Teamwork.
Yeah, exactly. Teamwork.
I think there was like one person, I don't remember who it was, but she like jumped off the building onto Cloud and like threw him, and I'm like, that's not how physics works.
That was Yuffie.
It
was Yuffie.
She's just
our good girl Yuffie.
That's how
she's
friendship
just
works.
that good. Yeah.
Yes.
What is this, Naruto now?
She
Yes.
is a authentic
Did
ninja
you not watch
from
this movie?
Wu-Tai.
This is all
Yeah.
Naruto.
But I guess our major significant protagonist from this movie that was not in any previous title is Denzel. Did anyone get the chance to watch
Episode Denzel?
On the Way to a Smile, episode Denzel?
I did not have a chance. I've watched, not recently at least, I watched it a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but it has been a hot minute since I have watched that short.
So it is a Tori and I watched it. It is a 2D anime short. It's like 25 minutes, so normal length of like an anime episode. Basically chronicling how Denzel got from like his parents and how they were killed whenever Shinra exploded the Sector 7 plate.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal. Like he goes through some really messed up stuff. Like the journey from him getting from his parents to Cloud and Tifa. It's a very sad story.
Yeah.
The short itself is like okay. I mean, I would probably not watch it again. For
It's
like
got that early 2000s anime style that just looks really... It's
Hasn't
like...
aged well.
Huh?
Hasn't really aged well.
No, it looks...
really.
It looks... It's too rounded. in comparison to like what we see now. So of course it looks bad comparatively, but
it looks cheap.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it looks very cheap, and not that it's bad or anything, not that you shouldn't watch it, but don't expect it to be like awesome.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a good like filler piece for understanding a little bit more about where Denzel's coming from. But there was this weird disconnect for me, and maybe it was just the performance of the English actor, but the way that they characterized Denzel in his short was that he was much more mature for his age. But I guess that didn't really come through in Advent Children.
When
so
you
much.
are a young child who goes through trauma,
Yes.
you grow up very fast.
No,
so.
I hear that, but he
Yeah.
didn't. No, that's not the problem I had. The problem I had was that he does not seem that way in Advent Children necessarily.
Okay, gotcha.
He seems a little bit more naive than someone who would have been like through all of these horrible situations, spent life on the streets to some degree. And in Advent Children, the movie, he seems a little bit more sheltered.
So
did
that short come before or after the movie?
in when it was made or chronologically?
When the
like when
public
it
was
was
able
made.
to watch it.
Oh yeah, it was made for the release of Complete.
Okay, so it's
Okay.
So after the
newer.
Yes.
So after the dub, after the first dub. Okay.
Yeah.
So that could be why they didn't have that material before, and so they just played the character how they thought it should work.
I understand that, but like it was also like some of his decisions in Advent Children seemed a little naive, but I mean,
yeah.
I
It
mean,
was just
I
a
feel
weird
like
disconnect
kind
for
of
me.
coming to it not saying that particular episode. I do appreciate him being there as a representation of all the kind of stuff that Shinra is responsible for. Like,
Yes.
sure, in the game we see the Sector 7 plate fall, and we see that happen in real time, and just the implications kind of like horrify you, the player, but you don't really see the people's the way they react to it,
The human
aside from
cost.
saying yeah, we don't see that, except Rufus as this comical supervillain as you fight him throughout the game and all that kind of stuff there.
It was
But to
under my
see-
cape all along.
Yeah,
That was
like-
actually my one thing is like Rufus when he uncaped, I expected to see like a lot more of a grisly scene than what we got, because he like left himself like hidden the entire time, and I was like,
was his
oh man,
key.
what
That
happened
was
to
the
him
idea.
after like
yeah, that was the idea.
yeah.
But anyway, continue.
but anyway,
Tobias.
to go. What was I saying? Oh yeah, with Rufus. But yeah, we see the human cost there, and I do like the new scenes of Denzel here. But I feel like he's just kind of helpless, like his parents die, he finds the church, he finds his new parents, Tifa and Cloud, and he starts to suffer through this space leprosy, and he's just, well, this is it, I guess. This is my life, and he does in the same way. In this, I guess, to mirror Cloud's journey, he also sort of has to discover his own self-reliance throughout as well.
And that and the film text of Advent Children, I think, tells his story pretty well, but it's in addition to the episode Denzel is what threw a wrench into that, because his characterization in that specific short is, at least to me, coded as very different. Like, he acts different.
Right.
His life experiences lead you to think that he would act differently in the the
Right,
film of Advent
right.
Children.
Right.
Well, so sort of piggyback off that, I didn't watch any of the extra material or read anything else really. Did you guys watch all those episodes?
It's just it's one like Square. They do a thing in like pretty much everything where they're like, if they release DLC, they'll call it episode, and then like the
Yeah,
the
but
focus
did any of you
character.
guys like watch them all? 'Cause I saw there's a couple more than just the Denzel one, right?
Well, there's the Denzel one, and then on the release that Will has, actually, the special edition. It was never it's not on Complete for some reason, and it was not on the standard edition. It's called Last Order Final Fantasy VII, and it is a short anime episode done by Studio Madhouse that basically chronicles the end of Zack's story, essentially. Like, it starts off with Zack like carrying that somewhat comatose Cloud through nonsense after they're being chased by the Turks, and like Song sicks the soldiers on him, and you see like Sephiroth burning Nibelheim, and
It's like
him
filler
like
material.
no
Okay,
it's what
Well, not
happens in
filler
the
material.
game.
It's
Yeah,
catch up.
Like a
material.
recap,
Yes,
sort
thank
of.
you.
Yeah,
recap
yeah.
material.
Yeah.
right, exactly.
I only saw the Denzel one, so
Right. And you see like Sephiroth attacking a young Tifa and like killing her father, and like Cloud confronting Sephiroth and stabbing him with the Buster Sword, and it basically sort of ends with Cloud stabbing Sephiroth and sending him into Palpatine style down the Mako reactor.
Do you know offhand
Yeah,
actually
just like
if it's the
Palpatine.
same? They reused footage for Zack's death from Crisis Core. Do you know if that's the same footage that they used from Crisis Core? Because they did have that stuff in Crisis Core.
This short is 2D animated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is not 3D. It's 2D. It was done by Studio Madhouse. Has a very Madhouse early 2000s style to it.
Oof.
But I mean, it's pretty good. I think it's better than the episode Denzel, like as an overall piece. But then it sort of ends with like Hojo kidnapping Cloud and like taking him back and presumably experimenting on him and all that stuff. So it's pretty worth checking out. Will, have you seen it?
I have not. I actually didn't even know it was on my release until just now. So now I have a
It
reason to watch.
It is on disc 2. You should check it out.
I see.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that may just cover a lot of the ground that Crisis Core ends up covering, but I guess seeing it in that 2D style, more visually different, it definitely sounds like something that would at least be worth checking out. I'm a big Zack
Definitely.
fan for sure, so I think I know what I'm doing
Right.
after the podcast.
I think that you'll appreciate it. Crisis Core covers the same exact content, but it is just interesting to see, Final Fantasy characters done in an anime style in a traditional 2D anime setting.
Right.
And also, Crisis Core has Gact as an anime character.
Yep.
That is funny that you mentioned Gact. Speaking of musical acts, the original ending credits theme song of Advent Children was a song called "Calling" by a artist called Kyosuke Himuro, who's a very old school Japanese pop rock artist. And for the Japanese version of Advent Children Complete, he did a brand new song called Safe and Sound with special vocal guest, my boy, Gerard Way.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. It is unfortunately not on the disc for Advent Children Complete in the US, but you can find the song, you can find the music video out on YouTube. It's called Safe and Sound. It'll probably appear in this episode in audio form in some
And then we get a
format.
cease and desist from Gerard Way.
That's fine. Bring it on.
I've got an important question.
Oh
Yeah.
boy.
So where can I buy a cell phone?
You got games on that phone?
That is the question for the
It was-
ages.
It was funny
As
'cause
Marlene
earlier,
and Denzel
Tori-
are flossing.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Go ahead.
It was funny because you made that tweet earlier, Tori, and I watched the scene where Vincent shows up, and instantly
Yeah.
she goes over to Cloud. I was like, "Hey, where's your phone?" And then she asked Vincent, and Vincent's like, "I don't even know what a phone is. What are you talking about?" He just pulls
Do
his
you have
cape
games
off.
on that phone?
I thought it was hilarious also when Cloud loses his phone. I'm just like, that's fine. He can pick that up. It's a Nokia.
Oh man.
I wonder
good
what the
point.
battery life is like on those phones.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing actually. Is he was kind of out and about, just kind of exploring the world with a cell phone that was fully charged. So either his motorcycle had a charger, or he had the greatest cell phone ever.
So that scene at the end where it's Red 13 and his pups, 500 years later, that phone is still alive back then too.
And they're using it.
How? They don't have thumbs.
Alexa.
That's rude.
That's how. Crap! I just turned mine
Hey
on.
Siri.
Damn it.
Jeez. Turn off Alexa.
Yeah, just briefly touching on the visual. I think Red 13 is interesting because Red 13, every time it's on the screen, it very much reminds me this is a 2005 movie.
Oh, yes.
Definitely-
In the
it
regard that
definitely-
they had to have the animal buddy.
Well, no, it's the fur effects. Everything in the
Yeah.
movie looks
Oh.
great. The fabric, every time there's clothes on the screen, they were so well animated. You talk about Rufus's
Yeah.
cape, Cloud's shoulder cape thing. Just watch the movie, and they put so much effort into animating the way these fabrics move. But when Red 13 shows up, it looks so bad.
See, I
Or
didn't
the
even
wolf.
notice that because I was too busy looking at Cloud's motorcycle.
Can we talk
the
about that wolf
motorcycle,
real
yeah.
quick, actually? Like, now
I
that
mean,
you
I'm
mentioned
telling
it.
you, man. I'm telling you, man. Did you guys realize that that wolf is supposed to be a metaphor for the fact that Cloud is a lone wolf out on his own,
Yeah.
you know, in the wilds by himself?
Does he have two wolves inside of him?
He does, and they're both sad.
And they're both sad.
One of the wolves is named Aerith, the other is named Zach.
Oh,
Exactly. Yeah.
no. He's the third wheel. Oh.
He just watches.
Well, there's a reason that Cloud, one of his ultimate weapons is always called Fenrir.
Because again, he's a wolf.
Yeah.
Because he's out there by himself, the
Yes.
lone wolf.
Yes, he walked so we could run.
Thank you, Cloud.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cloud.
It's going to turn out that the wolf's just going to be a DLC skin for Red 13 in the remake.
Oh no.
Gosh. Well, speaking of some of the animation, like, you can definitely tell, especially for Cloud and Tifa, probably Tifa a little bit more so, that their command of subtle facial expressions in like 2005 CG animation, so good. Like, it still holds up very well. Like, high quality glossy CG anime looks a little bit better now, especially in the video game sphere. But I mean,
We can
I'd
see
say,
pores
guys,
now.
yeah, we can see pores, but honestly, we could kind of see some pores back then too. I mean, they
Yeah.
looked very solid.
They had a very realistic texture to their face.
They
for
did,
sure.
yeah. And I mean, the hair definitely looks a little bit on the older side, but it works for the style that they're going for. So I think that, hats off to this film for being able to hold up visually so well 14/10 years later.
14/10.
You mentioned VisualWorks earlier with all their work throughout, and I think that is very important to track the growth of the Final Fantasy series. Everyone lambasts Spirits Within, but there's a direct through line to Spirits Within, to Advent Children, to all the visual effects all the way up to FF15. Like, there was a definite change from the sprite-based stuff from the Super Nintendo, into what they were doing with this game here, and then FF8 with the
Right.
more widespread use of the FMVs. And even a few years after Advent Children with FF12 used a lot of that same, if not the same, engine, graphical technology. There still is an emphasis on those style of graphics that we still see even in the new games.
Now, I've heard this. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently the textures for Final Fantasy XII were so advanced at the time that in the HD remaster they didn't have to update them.
I do not know about that one, Chief, but
Okay. If I'm wrong, somebody please correct me in the
a
comments.
lot of the
I would be interested in
textures,
learning
I
about
mean,
that.
maybe that's not exactly 100% correct, but I wouldn't doubt it. Like, a lot of those textures don't take up that much memory on the disc compared to a lot of the other data. So even if you were to load up the original FF12 on one of these new fancy emulators that can buff up resolutions much beyond they were intended for, then yeah, I'm sure they would look a lot more crisp and clean than they would on the PlayStation 2.
I really don't know about that for 12, but 12 was also a very good game that if you have not played, you should. But that's an entirely separate discussion.
All right, guys. Do you guys have any final thoughts that you'd like to say about Advent Children?
If you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII, you should watch it. If you're not a fan of Final Fantasy VII, you could probably miss this one, but it's still very good.
At the very least,
Will?
it's a good film to kind of just like watch for the cinematography and fight scenes. Don't focus so much on the plot like I did when I first watched it. But you still will, I think people will still enjoy it even if you don't have that like super deep previous history with Final Fantasy VII as a whole. But I do think it is worth knowing at least about the game before jumping into the movie first.
I really agree with that. And if you want to watch some Final Fantasy characters get into a bunch of really cool, flashy fights, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like me and waiting to replay the original game with the remake, there's no reason to start playing it now, and the remake's coming out in 6 months. This is
How
probably a
dare
good
you
way
say
to
that.
Just
It's
at
probably
me
a good-
next time.
This is probably a good way to experience that without having to start another 80-hour game. So don't dilly-dally or shilly-shally and watch this movie.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And
I will
it's pretty.
say-
It's very accessible. I mean, you can get copies of this DVD for like dirt cheap because
Yeah.
there's a billion of them out there.
I
and
found the
even
Blu-ray.
Blu-rays.
Yeah, for like $6. So.
Yeah, $6 secondhand for this Blu-ray, and
Yeah, Will found me the special edition at a flea market at AWA last year for like what $3.
It was like $2. I was like,
Yeah.
I think Ryan has
See,
this, but I'll
exactly.
buy it anyway in case he doesn't have it.
I had bought the Blu-ray and you had shown off your special edition. I was like, man, I would love to have that. And then you were like, hey, I found it, and I was like, cool.
And hey, guess what? You have Last Order now too.
Yeah.
yeah, you do. You can go check that out.
So
but
if
yeah,
you're even cheaper than going to spend a couple bucks on the Blu-ray, it is right now available on Crackle.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
oh wow, cool.
It is on Crackle.
You just have to watch
and
a lot of
looking at
ads.
it's for fairly cheap on like Google Play, YouTube, and Amazon Prime as well. So those are all options.
You can pretty much rent anything off of YouTube for like $3, and you get it for like 2 days. So,
It's pretty much just Google Play.
yeah.
And sort of as my final thoughts on the film as well, like I have a lot of sentimental attachment to this movie. It was something that sort of brought me to where I am today in terms of being a massive otaku, big fan of Japanese video games, Japanese animation, and this is something that's very important to me in that regard.
In short,
still
it's
think
what
it's a
made you a
solid film.
complete nerd.
Exactly. Cloud, sort of. Yuffie picked me up and threw me into the sky of being a nerd and all that stuff.
You could say Yuffie yeeted you.
Exactly. Yuffie
The
yeeted
original
me.
eater.
But yeah, this movie it's got some flaws, but it's pretty solid. If you're somebody that loves Final Fantasy, loves Final Fantasy VII, and loves these characters, I think that there's definitely something in this film for you. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. But if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen this already.
That's probably. I mean, if you're like a Final Fantasy fan or even FF7 fan in particular, you've seen this movie already. Like, let's be honest.
Or if you're listening to this
it's good.
podcast and you haven't like seen any Final Fantasy anything, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for
So
putting
sorry.
up with this. Talking about something that you have no frame of reference for at all.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you more than anyone.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, if you're getting hyped for the new remake come out in 6 months, I think this is at least a decent watch for that reason, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Definitely, for sure. And if you do want to play the original Final Fantasy VII, it is available on most modern consoles, including PC.
It's on Switch
Tori-
now, which is like a hell of a
Yeah.
way to play it because you
Yeah,
can literally play it in the car.
It finished downloading about 20 or 30 minutes ago, and I only had to pay $17 for it. So
Yeah, so it's
Hell
still pretty
yeah.
cheap. And it's I would for some collectors or purists this would be heresy, but I don't really see much of a reason to play Final Fantasy VII on disc anymore in 2019. For some people that are very picky about their gameplay experiences, that's what they're going to go for. But if you're like most normal people, playing one of the ports is probably just fine and dandy for you.
Well, I feel like we're being
Gamers?
called out.
Yeah. How are you gonna? You're gonna
I love
miss
you,
out.
Ryan.
gamers aren't oppressed.
You're gonna miss
but
out
they
on
should
that
be.
disc switching action if you play on the
Yeah, man.
pre-disc
Yeah.
It's
version.
like iconic.
Yeah, Ryan, gamers aren't oppressed, but they should be.
I mean, I kind of agree, to be honest.
I mean, in any way, I feel like having some sort of fast forward feature, whether you're
Yes.
playing it on emulator or one of the fancy new ports that have that built in.
Yes, I will say
I
the
feel like-
fast forward feature is kind of a godsend.
Yeah, between grinding like your characters and the materia, because that's something a trick I found my last playthrough is you can multiply materia and sell it for a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
Grinding, I'd say it makes the grinding a lot easier when you can learn. You
Well,
can
that's
just
the whole
hold
point of the
the
materia
enter
system is
button
once you
and just
max
grind away.
something, it you literally get another one for some reason. I honestly do not understand that, but you do. And like
Should you also use the fast forward feature on Advent Children?
Stop.
well, that's a
I'm
movie,
kidding.
so
Unless you're like me and you're always accidentally hitting the PlayStation 4 controller and like
that-
skipping around who knows where into
Watch
the
your
movie.
limbs.
that happens to us. Will and I do movie night every week, and like so many times we watch it on his PS4, and so many times somebody will like accidentally bump the PlayStation controller, and we'll like skip a scene, and we have to like figure out where
Yeah.
we were.
I have no spatial awareness, so
Y'all just need to put your controller inside of a black box with yellow tape around it and just sit in your
Mother.
wheelchair
Shoot
covered.
it.
Yeah, bang, bang,
Put a
bang.
head
And
next to it.
miss somehow. have a couple questions from Twitter and Instagram, and if you want to follow us on Twitter and ask us questions about future podcast episodes, that is twitter.com/TI_anime. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thirdimpactanime. And more or less every episode that we do take questions for. And if you want to send us a question unrelated to some episode that we are recording, you can always send us an email at thirdimpactanime@gmail.com.
And we don't check it.
No, we absolutely do. I read every single email that we get. Most things are spam or press releases of some kind, but or updates from YouTube or whatever. But anyway, we got a couple of questions. So the first one is from Bill. Hi, Bill. Love you. Why do you think the story and characters of Final Fantasy VII have maintained a place in people's hearts and minds for more than 20 years? Is it just nostalgia, or it was their first RPG, or is it something more? To Bill, I would say it's because Final Fantasy VII is a really good game, and the characters are really good, and it's pretty much that simple, I think.
I would say it's probably a bit of nostalgia mixed with it is probably a lot of people's first RPG.
I'm sure, but you could say the same thing about, like, anything.
I mean, I do say that about a lot of things, so...
Yeah, I think it is...
I don't really... Oh,
Yeah,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I was
go
gonna say, I
ahead.
think it really is kind of a mixture of both, because like even when the game came out, I'm sure Tobias can talk more about this as well. Like just in terms of its leaps graphically and storytelling wise in a game, like first Final Fantasy game on a or PlayStation 1, like the jump from the sprites on Super Nintendo to like 3D, and it was a lot of people's first, myself included, like real JRPG experience that like opened up the whole door into this genre. So like from the nostalgia side, I definitely see it, but even its overhypeness aside, it's still a very solid game that I haven't even played another Final Fantasy game that's come close to how much I've enjoyed it.
And I think to just piggyback off of what you said, Will, again, that was sort of the most penetrative sort of JRPG in America for like the first time. It's like they had been released over here, but nothing really hit as hard as Final Fantasy VII. And then every
it was
JRPG
very
success
mainstream compared
afterwards.
to like any of the others, like 2 or 3 or 4 and 6, whatever you want to call them.
Right, and I don't...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I don't have a huge dog in this fight because I haven't played 7 myself.
Yeah.
But whenever I talk to people about video games, specifically like JRPGs, and I'm very picky with RPG games in general because I know I'm going to have to dedicate a lot of time to it.
Oh, yeah.
Which, with this, it's fine, but like whenever I'm talking to people about those types of games, like their first one was always Final Fantasy VII. What's your favorite one? Final Fantasy VII. So I think it was just pivotal for a lot of people's like entry into JRPGs as a genre, and you know that does play into nostalgia too. So
Yeah, I think both you and Will hit on the head with that in particular. You see a lot of this with both comparing this game to Final Fantasy VI and also like Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, and you always see this both of these older fans and maybe not new at this point, but I guess it's the whole boomer versus millennial fight like, video game squares.
but
Like,
see,
well,
it's such an
the Super
an
Nintendo
unfair-
games were better, but the PlayStation games or the 3D games are better. Well, yeah, I think a lot of it is just that it is easy to forget now that the PlayStation 1, like Will said, was a introduction to a whole new generation of gamers, which are now adults. So there definitely is a nostalgia factor played there. While FF4/2 and 3/6 were pretty popular at the time among the niche fans, our JRPGs or RPGs in particular were still kind of niche compared to the platformers and the action games of the time. So sure, you had diehard fans that will argue with you all day about how great FF6 was. They weren't as prolific up until that point. I don't feel like, in the grand scheme of things. So I feel like that's kind of the case there. I think FF7 to me I enjoy because of how much it changed the setting of the Final Fantasy games. Up until the point it was mostly D&D style fantasy. FF6 had a lot of that steampunk Magitech stuff, which was very interesting in and of itself, but FF7 took that even further into this gritty industrial type of area with Midgard, and to see these characters use both guns and swords and spells was very interesting and a little different at that time. I won't say it's the first to do cyberpunk magic stuff, but
But it did
so
it
in a
well,
very
and it did it
Japanese-
mainstream. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. It did in a way that captured the hearts and minds of a lot of new gamers, and we just think about like that one frame that was, I think, on the cover of the game actually, with Cloud standing in front of the Shinra Tower. It's just
Yeah.
a very iconic shot. That, I mean, hell, if you have any experience at the time, you've seen that how iconic that is, and just how it sums up like the introduction to that game, and yeah.
For sure. I think, yeah, I don't know. It's very iconic. The music is also incredible, and I'm like a person who I judge my games a lot based on whether or not they have a banging soundtrack, and this one has some bangers.
Oh yeah, and I would echo that with Advent Children as well. It's got some bangers as well, and some rearrangements of previous bangers.
A lot of the Advent Children
we didn't really
stuff
talk about
actually,
They've been
Yeah.
rebanged.
Yeah, we really didn't talk much about the Advent Children music, but it's also very good.
The one thing about Advent Children actually that I noticed was that it sounded a lot like, at least in Complete, it sounded a lot like the orchestrated versions of the stuff we saw at the Final Fantasy VII or the Final Fantasy concert that we went to in October.
Right.
It sounded a lot like that stuff.
And I know that around the same time as when Advent Children was being created, that was around the time where Nobuo Uematsu founded his rock band, the Black Mages.
Yeah.
And I don't think they do much anymore, because Uematsu doesn't really work for Square much anymore. But they basically made a rock band, and the the core soundtrack of Advent Children is very heavy metal, and you can definitely tell that he was definitely in his Black Mages phase at that time. But anyway, we've got another question here. So Basil from the Awesome Cast asks, "Hi Basil, how does it feel that the cell phone gets the same death as a main character?" Ooh, that's hurtful.
I think they took very heavy influence from the In the Water ending from Silent Hill 2 for that particular. No, I'm kidding.
I mean-
what were you?
The Into the Water ending from Silent Hill 2.
I mean, like I said, that phone isn't dead. It's a Nokia.
Yeah.
That's true. Fair enough. Basil also asks, "Do the fights still hold no weight? I remember feeling like two pieces of paper could have been fighting instead of Cloud and others." I mean,
There was some great choreography in some scenes. I guess I didn't touch too much upon the Tifa Laws fight, but that still holds up so well. I
The
think
Cloud
that's the one
Sephiroth
scene
fight
that
is good, but
I don't know if we're gonna do the whole like one scene you remember or take away like we usually do.
Yes, we
but,
are. Yeah.
Okay, well I'm just gonna go ahead and say that's mine. I call that. Too bad. Game
Fair.
over, pal. Because that's the one scene that I still think holds up so much for a couple reasons. Other than that, no, Basil, I agree with you. That whole final Sephiroth fight, I was checking my phone and not really paying attention because except for that one part where they're on two pieces of debris falling down, Bayonetta style, and slashing each other, like that was a pretty awesome part. The rest of it just felt very generic, and honestly, up until the point where he casts Sword and swords the guy with 5 swords, I just felt
you mean
very,
Omni Slash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Will
Swords.
and I both said the one fight that was very needless was the highway fight.
Yeah.
Too much motorcycle.
It
I
upset
think
me that they
the
upset
one
me that they
single
did
segment
a.
Go ahead.
It upset me that they did a weird bait and switch that for a moment you thought Reno and Rude blew themselves up.
Oh yeah.
And I'm so glad that they established that didn't happen, because that
Yes.
would have been such a strange flex for their characters
Yes.
that would have made no sense
That
whatsoever.
really upset me the first time I watched that movie because I really like them.
Yeah, and it just wouldn't have made any sense. They're not that heroic. Like,
No.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's neither here
They're
nor there.
chaotically good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but not
So-
that chaotic.
So that part, 2 points. The motorcycle, the highway scene was mostly useless. But the part where Laws grabs the ground, grabs the motorcycle with his legs, and swings it back at Cloud.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
That was hardcore.
Yes.
Even if nothing else really paid off. But I didn't really notice it the first time I saw this movie because I guess I wasn't into the characters as much. But I definitely appreciated the Turks more in this version.
Yes.
Seeing Reno just being like a goofball and Rude trying not to laugh the whole time.
Also,
was very, very
in the
enjoyable.
dub, Reno is voiced by the amazing Quentin Flynn, who also does Axel
and they're basically the same character.
I kind of thought that the whole time. And I think like my second favorite scene in the whole movie is where Reno accidentally smashes Rude's glasses, and he's got the face that he's just like, what have you done? And then instantly pulls out a backup pair of sunglasses.
Yes.
Loved it.
I'm pretty sure you
gags.
commented on that.
Yeah.
There's so many great visual gags throughout that.
Yes.
Just related to those characters in particular. Of
Yeah,
course,
I've forgotten how funny that movie is.
Yeah, it's got some good gags.
The scene at the
especially
beginning
those
where
two.
Reno's trying to attack Cloud and he just closes the door and locks it.
Yes.
It's like a very perfect pacing on that.
Also, Reno tries to beat down a legendary dragon who, in some games, is the father of all Eidolons with a stun baton. So, like,
Yeah.
No, as
10
you
out
do.
of 10. You tried, buddy. You tried.
All right, Ryan, and your coworker had a specific question. Do you want to handle this one?
Yeah, my coworker Evan, I was talking to him about the fact that we were doing this podcast at lunch today, and we started talking about Final Fantasy VII, and he just goes, "Did anybody use that stupid Moogle bot?" And my answer was no, because Kate Sith, or Ketchi, however the hell you want to pronounce his name, was a very useless character in many, many ways that served no purpose to the story besides to piss you off, and if you're a completionist like I am, give you another character to grind limit breaks for, and his limit breaks were very annoying. I did not enjoy using him when I played, but...
Aren't you just so glad that they made him a major side character in Dirge of Cerberus?
Yeah, so glad.
With that character, I tried to use him in my last playthrough. I was trying to go beyond the normal lineup, and yeah, just didn't really enjoy it. Like, at least with Vincent, you've got that one gun with the 100% hit rate and Death Blow.
Yeah.
It was a little OP, but like Akechi was like, he's just not really great compared to the other characters.
I mean, Vincent was like basically like the definition of an optional character, because you didn't miss out by not having him, but God, he was so fun to play as, like, or to use. Like, if you did have him, oh my God, it was fun.
So that sort of brings us to the end of the episode here, and I would like to do the thing that we try and do in every episode, which is go around and hear from everyone about what their favorite or most iconic moment from the film was. So, Tobias, you already outlined yours, but if you would like to elaborate.
Yeah, so I mentioned the fight in the church with Tifa and Loz, and this one thing that really does stand out to me, even the few years between seeing this movie, I think I've watched it on YouTube a couple times, just of how fun it is to watch. From the fight choreography and just in general, I feel like Tifa's kind of, what do you say, like, I feel like she's underrepresented, underplayed in a lot of people's memories of these games. So to see her be a total badass was just kind of amazing. The music it plays is just a piano rendition of the battle music, which is a nice callback. And of course, like we mentioned, the cell phone ringtone is just it's perfect.
That was
Chef,
amazing.
Chef kissing fingers, like it's just so perfect. And just like all the different action scenes, like you mentioned, Nomura's perfect direction. Just it's such a good scene.
Will, what about you?
Mine, I think personally, just because, again, when I watched this movie, it was going out of having a lot of nostalgia and love for Final Fantasy VII. My favorite is probably the scene towards the end when all the other party members come back to Midgar to help fight the giant behemoth raging down. Just because I love all the characters in Final Fantasy VII, except Kate Sith, probably. He's all right, but I just I love Tifa, Barrett, like Sid. They're all so iconic for me personally. So being able to see them all on screen and have like a big fight together, and also the montage of all of them like lifting Cloud up to give the finishing blow is probably like my favorite bit of just seeing all of them do that teamwork in like a film version of like Final Fantasy. It's just so great for me.
Tori?
Since I can't talk about the church fight,
You could do
I
that.
do-
That's fine. It's a good scene.
yeah, it's just very iconic. But I think there's a small scene that really sticks out to me, where Cloud is on his motorcycle and he's going to save the kids, but he has that like moment with Tifa, and he's just like, "I'm looking for forgiveness," and Aerith goes, "Well, from who?" or something like that, and just that's a very emotional moment, and there's just something like really beautiful and like ethereal about that scene, so I like it.
Yeah, it sort of calls back to that moment where the phone is falling and you hear Aerith's voice and says, like, I never blamed you.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
sort of a great button on that
Which,
theme of, like,
tear my
Aerith-
heart apart.
Yeah, exactly. Like, of Aerith not holding a grudge against
Yes.
Cloud for his perceived mistake.
Let's be honest, though. If Aerith did hold a grudge, I'd be like, okay, Nomura, you don't need to be edgy about everything.
Yeah, for sure. But Ryan, what about you? Most iconic scene?
Well, being that Will took mine, I'm probably I'm probably gonna say the Forgotten City fight when because I love that area in the game in general because I think it's a very beautiful area, and then the scene where Vincent shows up just looks so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure.
that entire area I thought was very neat, and I enjoyed that sequence a lot, despite the like the children being stupid enough to drink the water that the man just turned black because his mere presence. But
I mean, they were dying. They probably were desperate for anything.
that's fair.
So,
But like literally, man walks into water, water immediately turns into darkness. Don't drink the darkness. Like,
Oh, good advice.
yeah,
Don't drink the darkness, or Kingdom Hearts 4.
right.
I guess for me, you guys sort of outlined a lot of my favorites as well, but one of my favorite comedy moments is when Laws is talking to Rude and the billboard falls off and hits Rude smack
was
dab in
so
the head.
funny.
yes.
So good.
That
Like
was
that,
so funny.
I think the glasses gag is funnier, but like that one where he gets hit with the sign is so good. But I guess for me, most iconic moment. If you were to ask 12-year-old me what my most iconic moment would be, it would be where Kadaj is falling at the beginning of the Sephiroth fight and like transforms into Sephiroth as soon as Cloud gets down there and his sword swings and appears and he says, "Good to see you, Cloud." That would be my answer.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling 12 right now, so that's gonna be my answer. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so very much for joining me on this episode of the Third Impact Anime Podcast. Tobias, where can people talk to you on the internet?
They can find me on my Twitter at Reverend_Tobias.
What about you, Tori?
You can find me on Twitter at Worst Waifu. Come watch me live tweet my first playthrough of Final Fantasy VII.
Mr. Midshelf Ryan and/or Will?
Well, you just said mine, so
That's hilarious. I did. Wow.
did you not know that was my Twitter handle, or
No, I did. Technically it's not at Mr. Midshelf Ryan.
not
but it
Mr.
kinda should
Midshelf
be.
Ryan? But
Yeah.
It should
Mr.
be.
Midshelf Ryan is my father.
Well, you can also find me at Twitter at swooshxbear, and you can also follow Ryan and I and our buddy Edwin's antics over at Midshelf Gaming, where we do post updates about our ongoing video game journey together.
And we
So,
also
next-
occasionally make YouTube videos whenever my work allows it.
So up next for you guys is puzzle games. Is that correct?
Puzzle games.
It is.
Could you give the listeners a hint as to what some of the games that you will be talking about are?
Tetris.
I'll give a hint in that
Alright.
I'm covering both of my games are on my favorite system, and if you want to know what that is, you should follow me on Twitter and you'll find out.
Perfect.
Yeah,
It's cloud
this
cell
was an episode that, ironically enough, was supposed to be one that we could easily do and use as like a de-stress after MomoCon, because we worked really hard on the episode we did before MomoCon, which was anime games. And then my work exploded, and I haven't had time to finish editing it, and we've had so many production snafus that it's literally become the opposite of like a palate cleanser and become a chore. But
Was Shinra also responsible for that explosion?
yeah, pretty much. But we still are looking forward to like this episode because it is one of our better ones, I think. And puzzle games are fun, so look forward to it. Once I actually stop being angry about technology and actually am able to sit down and do the episode, it'll be great.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. You guys' videos have knocked it out of the park every single time, and you guys make good stuff. But as for me, you can find me over on Twitter at Bebop Shock. That's Bebop as in Cowboy Bebop, and that is Shock as in what Laws's weapon does to Tifa in that scene in the very end.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Nothing.
sorry, that was stupid. Anyway, but if you guys are interested in supporting the Third Impact Anime podcast, please consider donating to us either on our Ko-fi or our Patreon. We have 3 Patreon tiers. The first one is just a simple $1 support tier. Tier number 2 is our $3 tier, where you will get a shout out read for you on the podcast, and our third tier is the $10 a month tier, where you will be credited as a mini producer, and you will have the chance to suggest titles for us to watch and review, or guests that you would like to appear on the episode, or general topics of discussion you would like for us to cover. And if we decide to choose the thing that you nominate for us, you will get credited as the mini producer on that episode. So it's very exciting. Definitely something that you should do if you have a spare $10, which of course you do, and you definitely want to throw it our way for sure. But thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate you sticking around with us to talk about Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. And if you want to play the game, it is on the Switch, it is on Steam, it is on PlayStation 4. And again, look out for Final Fantasy VII Remake coming very soon, sooner than I expected, in March of 2020. So thank you guys so much. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you next time.
A cacophony of noise.